Geoff here from Seriously Series, and welcome to another adventure in our Golden Quest series, where we're looking at exploring outback Western Australia, but more importantly the goldfields of Western Australia. Here today we're going to go off on an adventure in the 59-year young Land Rover Series 2. And what we're going to be exploring is one of the largest Mediterranean climate woodlands in the world. What I want to look at and show to you is that owning a four-wheel drive is only the tip of the iceberg. It's getting out there and exploring your part of the world that really makes it, in my mind, worthwhile owning one of these vehicles, whatever make, brand or configuration they may be. Obviously, I'm going to be showing you some of the hidden gems out in this part of the world, tips and tricks for your series Land Rover along the way, and a few camping trips chucked in there for good measure as always too. So if this sounds like a video that is of interest to you, you know what to do. Stay tuned.
Great to be back out, having an adventure in the series too, even if I was having to eat a little bit more dust due to the door tops being off. We would be exploring the Great Western Woodlands, and to really get into how this ecosystem flourishes and functions in such an arid part of the world, we'd be looking at the drainage system of this environment. To do this, we would be taking a unique trail, heading south on the Victoria Rock Road and turning east with the aim of reaching the destination of Cave Hill. From here we would head in a southeasterly direction, following the old trail to Sunday Soak and onto the two lowest points in the landscape, the salt lakes of Lake Lefroy and Lake Cowan.
Cheers. Oh, bit of a warm one today. I don't think I'll be doing another trip in the Series 2 this year. We're starting to get into what's known as sort of the storm season out here in the goldfields. And you can see in the sky behind me here a lot of white fluffy clouds floating around. We've just had a big storm go through probably late last week, and these start occurring round about, obviously, this time of year, round about late October, November. And this obviously occurs due to the cyclones and the monsoon actually within Southeast Asia. And the monsoon comes down and obviously mixes with hot and cold air and causes cyclones to occur. And these come across the Timor Sea, and then they actually hit the dry, hot Australian landmass, and then they break up, and then they end up coming all the way down over the desert, over the arid areas, to here in the Great Western Woodlands, or the goldfields. And with that comes a lot of other interesting things, and look, many of you probably know I find just about anything interesting, but what you can see behind me here too is it's absolutely flat, sparse, and there's very little vegetation. You can see behind me, it looks like a bushfire's pretty much gone through it. There's vegetation coming back, but this sort of occurred probably a couple of years ago. And it's really because of those cyclonic conditions coming down from the north and then coming down this way, and you get this big change in obviously weather conditions, as I mentioned with the monsoon. because of that, as we know how lightning occurs due to friction within the upper atmosphere, lightning strikes usually hit around this part of the world over the summer months, and this can cause absolute havoc, cause large-scale bushfires like what you see here. But anyway, so it is really interesting. We've only driven probably not even maybe 50 or 70 kilometres south of Coolgardie, and the interesting thing is obviously, as we can see here, the environment has changed. The soil is really, really sandy. One of the primary reasons for that is there's a lot of granite out around this part of the world, and obviously there's a high silica content which makes up sand. So the reason why we don't have the nice big trees behind us here is because the soil quality, or if there is any soil, it's just sand, is so poor it can't support large scale flora. So just another thing that makes the drive just a little bit more enjoyable. The Series 2's been going really well though. Just before I left Kalgoorlie, I replaced pretty much all the ignition system on it. I don't think I'd never ever put a new distributor cap on it, and I'd never ever put any new high tension leads or spark plug leads on it. So new distributor cap, new spark plug leads, point, condenser, rotor button, also new coil and ballast resistors on it too, and it's running like a charm. I keep trying to sit on about 40 miles an hour, which is, I don't know, probably 70-75 kilometers an hour, but it just won't do it. It just won't do it. There's too many horses and pit ponies in this engine, and it keeps wanting to sit on about 50, which I'm fine, but yeah, every now and again a pothole comes up or a little washout and you wake up pretty quickly. But it's just fantastic travelling in a vehicle like this. Like, you know, you don't have aircon and, you know, I guess cooled seats and all the rest, and I see a lot of four-wheel drives now, they come with a fridge in between you and the passenger. Wow, like the new Defender. But you just can't beat driving along with the door tops off. Like, it's the best thing, you know. And even if you have a new four-wheel drive, you've got to drive along with the window down. It's just brilliant, you know. I came around the corner and I knew that there was a change in the weather conditions, because I could feel it cool down and I could feel the humidity build up, and I knew, oh, maybe it's gonna rain, you know. And every few miles, you know, you might get a little bit relaxed and you get a little whiff of petrol or a little whiff of beautiful SAE 90 gear oil. Oh, just what an aroma. And, you know, and that wakes you up a bit and gets you back on the job, and you keep on going. But anyway, I could stand here and talk about this car all day and probably find a heap of other fascinating stuff out here too. And I don't want to bore you to death. No, we don't want that, do we? But I'll finish my non-alcoholic Bundy and get back to it, eh? Rightio, so things are starting to get serious. We've driven off the Victoria Rock Road, which was pretty good driving conditions. It's recently been graded, or is getting graded at the moment. But this track here going to Cave Hill is about 45 kilometres. We've had rain recently, as I mentioned earlier, and it's really heavily corrugated, like really bad. So we're going to put these fancy things in. I've got the four-wheel drive selector tool here, and these are the power lock hubs, and I've mentioned these in a previous video, but they're fantastic. They've got two cylinders, and I'll give you an up-close look, and basically these cylinders here have a slot cut out. So basically when the arrows are pointing out, it allows the cog to spin freely. If I now do the opposite though and turn them inwards, that actually engages the hub. And I just need to do the same on the other side. Then pull the lever down into low range or push the yellow knob inside the cab, and off we go. We've got four-wheel drive. Got no choice but to take it really, really slow. You can try and be a hero and nail it, and floor it, but I think you'll just end up in the bushes. And so they say with the Land Rover Series 2, it has the ability to lock up its front wheels. Sorry, lock up its wheels. That's what I read in a review from the 1960s, but in 14 years of driving this vehicle, I've never actually had that occur. Anyway, I'm just going to keep rattling along and get to where we need to go in time. Well, looks like the sun got the better of us in the end, but that doesn't really matter. One of the reasons I love getting out and doing this is you just go with the flow, and that's the best way of being able to actually enjoy your time out here. So we've just pulled off the track, and by we I mean myself and the Series 2, and we've got a beautiful vista behind the camera, which I'll show you in a minute. Little fireplace, so I'll get a fire going so I can cook some dinner, and probably whip up a bit of a cocktail and just sit marvelling at the Series 2 watching the sun go down. Doesn't get much better than that. Not in my book anyway. Anyway, let's get camp set up. So you may or may not be able to see this, but plenty of dust. And I just wonder, an absolute wonder, if the new Defender's door seals are as useless as the Series Land Rovers. I wonder. Because if they actually, God forbid, work, then it's not really a Land Rover, is it? No, you don't end up rocking up to the service station, you know, wearing what you've just driven through like this here. It'd be rather dull, wouldn't it? I think so. But anyway, we'll get it out, and hopefully there's a stiff breeze throughout the night and that might blow some of the dust away, but fingers crossed, I guess. Anyway. Well, looks like it's going to be an interesting evening. Massive thunderstorm, which looks like it's heading our way, or my way. I checked the weather and said there wasn't going to be any chance of rain, but oh well, you can never trust the weatherman anyway. Over to the west here, we've got these big plumes that come down from the clouds, and basically where you see that, that's where it's raining. And the odd thing is, because the landscape's so flat out here, you can see it miles and miles away. And back in the day, if you were a drover, that's exactly where you'd want to be taking your livestock, heading over that way and getting to elevated ground. Well, you could be mistaken for thinking that the work never ends here. I was just doing a bit of a pre-systems check, sort of getting towards evening now, and it's been a nice restful day round camp. So I thought I'd start preparing things for the next leg of the journey tomorrow, and I knew there was something potentially loose in the front steering system, because as I was driving along I could hear a bit of a clunking and the steering was a little bit somewhat vague. Anyway, this is a prime case of why you always take a good toolkit with you, and obviously a workshop manual and just a little bit of nous with you too. It turns out that the bolts that hold the swivel hub housing on have actually come slightly loose. So you've got the swivel hub housing here that your wheel sits on, and basically it swivels from forwards and backwards, obviously depending on which direction you're steering in. And obviously the bolts have come loose, so the whole thing is just moving up and down like that. So I'm very fortunate that I've picked it up now and haven't proceeded on further on down the track, ignorant to it all. Hit a heap of corrugations, the bolts snap, and the whole wheel and the whole kit and caboodle comes flying off the car. So really goes to show it pays to take your time and obviously do some pre-system checks before you hit the trails. So anyway, so got the overalls on. Always good to have overalls with you, and I'm just going to tighten up those bolts and see if that's obviously solved the issue. Anyway, I'll get stuck back into it. Right, moment of truth. Victory. It took a little bit of nutting out exactly what the fault was, as I mentioned before, with the loose bolts. They weren't, completely loose, but I could pretty much get a 9/16 spanner on it and just quite easily move them side to side or rotate them. That's good. I feel a little bit more at peace now, because if there were a couple options that it could have actually been. It could have been a severely worn bearing in the bottom of the swivel hub housing, or a worn Ryco bush. But I've had this thing apart so many times over the years, I doubt that would be the case. So what I actually did, and it was a little bit dangerous, but I've got the wheels chocked at the back, so I just lay down here and I just slowly pulled the wheel in and out, and I could actually just see ever so slightly the chrome ball where it bolts onto the actual axle just flexing a little bit. So then I was like, right, that's where the culprit is. Because I initially thought it was the wheel bearing had come a little bit loose, and that's why I've stripped everything out of the hub. But I was tightening this up and nothing was changing. So anyway, good result for the end of the day, and all ready for tomorrow. It's going to be a fun day. So anyway, just breaking camp and getting ready to hit the trail. I was just thinking, I don't know what it is, but I just really enjoy, I guess, this style of camping. And style's a bit of a funny word, really, but it's just so simple, and so easy and so versatile. Like the Series 3's all set up, as many of you know, with awning and fancy roof rack and drawers and dual battery system. I can use the fridge in it, but I don't know, I guess it feels like going back to my roots a bit. Just the, very little equipment you need, and just the overall simplicity of it. Anyway, I'll stop prattling on and pack the landy, and we'll get into some four-wheel drive action. So we finally made it to Cave Hill, and you can see the cave behind me here. This is a real prominent landmark in this part of the world, and it's actually really fascinating if you look into, why is it here? The rest of the landscape around here, as you can see, is flat as a tack, and so obviously it's not very high, obviously this granite dome or mound here, but it sticks out like nothing else. One of the reasons why we've got this granite here is about 2.5 billion years ago, there was a massive plume that came up from the centre of the earth. And these big plumes are obviously of rhyolitic lava. Now, rhyolitic lava has a high silica content, and it's not as hot as the lava as we see in Hawaii today. It's around about 600 degrees centigrade, whereas your lava in Hawaii is around about 800, I believe, 800 to 1000. So these big plumes of granite, or rhyolitic lava, magma, came up into the earth, and then they sat there for thousands of years. And these are huge. These are what they call batholiths. And a batholith is basically a large regional scale granitic intrusion or granite intrusion. Over literally billions of years and millions of years, all the surrounding rock that was above this has slowly weathered away. And the granite, being so hard and resistive that it is what we've got left here today. But in more recent times, it's played a very important cultural significance, obviously for the local Aborigines in the area too, and more so for the fauna in the area also. Because of the smooth surface of the granite and the little undulations and rock holes, it actually provides a perfect catchment area. So when it rains out here, like what I was talking about earlier in the video, the rain hits the surface and goes down and fills all those rock holes, providing a key water source in this part of the world. The cave behind me here would have been of great cultural significance back in the day. Because of the hard granite rock that we've got here, and obviously the vast variety of flora, this would mean that local Aborigines could pick certain seeds and use the hard rock and smooth surface to grind this down to form a flour to make a johnny cake or a rough kind of bush damper, so to speak. So there's a lot more to it than just a big rock sticking out of the bushland. If you stop, take your time and actually look at it and question it, it's amazing what you can find out. And I'll show you another example of how important these granites are as a form of water source later on down the track, because there's some really interesting things coming up. Right, so just had a bit of an explore around Cave Hill, and we're going to keep on going with the current trend of heading east. From here we're going to be following probably a bit of an old woodline track, and these were tracks that were put in basically to provide the wood much needed for the steam engines and obviously the ground support for the mines in Kalgoorlie. And today obviously the railway lines that were there once have all been ripped up and obviously been souvenired or scrapped, but they leave some fantastic tracks to explore this part of the world. So we're going to take one of them and head off to a place called Sunday Soak. And this is a great little camping spot, and I'll explain a little bit more about the significance of water sources in this part of the world, because this really sort of joins the whole story together. Now, one of the things, if you decide to come to Cave Hill and stay there, and you want to head down to Sunday Soak, don't do what I did the first time. And that was, I saw a track and I thought, oh yeah, that might be it. Ended up coming out of the complete and utter wrong spot, in the complete and utter wrong direction. So always consult the map. track's not too bad. It's a bit corrugated in places. And so in the Series 2, I find that about sort of 10 to 15 miles an hour is a pretty good speed. Some of the stuff I can actually round it up to 20 miles an hour, but some sections that's living a bit too dangerously, so I'll just go the Landy way, which is slow and steady, which tends to win the race. But so good having the door tops off. There's just nothing better than driving a Series Land Rover in the bush with your door tops off. Proper air conditioning. So we're here at a place called what I like to call Sunday Soak, and as you can see there's already a bit of water around here. But this really is quite fascinating in contrast to what we saw at Cave Hill. And the reason being is at one point in time there was a little settlement here. There's actually stockyards over that way, and we've got a little attempt to make a bit of a dam wall over here, and there's the remnants of some old pipe which probably went to a pump back in the day. But one of the oddities in this part of the world is that every rock outcrop has a name associated with it. When I first came here I thought, why would you name every single rock outcrop? It just seems silly, particularly if it's granite. But obviously with research and trying to learn and understand this part of the world, I've actually realised why they're so significant. And it's blatantly obvious, it's the water, as I explained at Cave Hill. And obviously this is why, there's stockyards there, or there were stockyards there, and there was a settlement here back in the day, because this is a key. One of the other interesting things is actually in the name. So this is Sunday Soak, we've got Cave Hill over there. But if you look at the old maps of the area, we've got Norseman to the south, which is a big gold mining town. We've got Kalgoorlie to the north, about 180 kilometres, which is a gold mining town. And on the old maps, you've got these outcrops of granite. And they're called 15 mile, 20 mile, 50 miles, 75, 100, and moving north. The reason why they got these names is because that's what the prospectors would have used back in the day. And they didn't have, obviously, a fancy Land Rover like what I've got here. No, we're talking about proper prospectors from like the 1890s and 1880s. All they had was a wheelbarrow, and not like the wheelbarrow we know today. These things were huge, and it literally would carry everything they possessed on that wheelbarrow and push it. And so they would have to, obviously, go to these soaks, like here, get as much water as they could, and then do the 20-mile trek to the next soak and slowly work their way north to Kalgoorlie and the goldfields. So, tough going. So when you think about it, like, I've obviously had to chew on a bit of dust over the last couple of days, and I'm pretty grubby and all the rest, but beats pushing a wheelbarrow, I can tell you that now. So we're certainly very lucky. But just knowing that and sort of looking into it, it really sort of gives you a great deal of appreciation, you know, what those early pioneers had to go through to really open up this land to the rest of the world. Yeah, it's staggering stuff when you think about it. Here we are at Lake Lefroy, and this is where what I've been talking about for the entire episode ends up. That's right, water. It's a harsh, desolate environment, and you could be kidding to think that there's nothing of interest here, but it is. Where it's situated is really, really interesting. We've been to Cave Hill, we've been to Sunday Soak, and these areas are a lot higher in relief or altitude than where we are here. And that's generally where all salt lakes form in this part of the world, in the lowest point in the landscape. So they basically form like a basin, you could think. But why have we got salt? Well, that's something else that's very interesting. Because there's a limited amount of rainfall that we get here on a yearly basis, 300 millimetres or so, it's not enough to provide the volume of water to generate a river system to get that water to the coast. Instead, what happens in the higher areas in the landscape, it simply runs off and then pools down here in the actual low-lying parts of the landscape. These salt lakes from time to time actually get large, bodies of water forming on them. But because of the intense heat that occurs over summer, this actually evaporates. And then all that's left is the salt that we see here today. Now, you would think that the salt would pretty much warn off any form of life, but there is actually life beneath this salt. There's a tiny little shrimp, and this shrimp goes into hibernation when the rains go away. When the rains come and the soil or the sand slowly moistens and a body of water forms on top, it comes out. By it coming out, obviously birds are attracted, it provides food, and it brings the whole environment back to life. So it's really, really fascinating. And salt, even in itself, has provided us, mankind, with an income and obviously a reason to build a community. We've obviously got Widgymortha, a little town just over that way, and on the other side of this salt lake there's actually the remains of an old salt works. So they used to harvest the salt, bag it up, and then put it on the train, and it'd go all over the world, no doubt. But one other little top tip before I finish. If you're looking for something with a bit more colour to it, like a gold nugget or two, this is the place to look. Not Lake Lefroy per se, but any salt lake, because everything drains into it. And many people over the years have tripped over one or two nuggets, but I'm sure there's a couple out there with your name on it too. Anyway, this marks the end of the trip, but not the end of the adventure. And I hope you've enjoyed this journey that we've been on, and you've learnt a few things along the way too. I certainly have also. But anyway, if you're new to the channel and you're just trying to figure out what we do, what we are, and all the rest, then click on that subscribe button down below, click on that notification button too. And that way you won't miss out on one single video. And a big thank you to our supporters via PayPal and Patreon. Due to your tireless efforts and proceeds, it's made this adventure, this episode, possible. Anyway, thank you very much, and I hope to see you in our next video.